My name is Katherine, and at 51, I thought I had stopped being surprised by life. I worked in corporate consulting, traveling from one city to another, airports, hotels, boardrooms, all blending into the same shade of gray. Then came my trip to Shanghai. The city felt alive in a way that New York hadn't in years, a pulse under its skyline, rhythm in the lights. I was there for 3 weeks to advise a local company. My interpreter was a young woman named Li Wei, 23, bright, quick, with laughter that could cut through the stiffest meeting. She was efficient, precise, and yet, when she smiled, the world seemed to slow down. One evening, after a long day of negotiations, she suggested showing me the real Shanghai. We walked through narrow streets lined with paper lanterns, the scent of jasmine tea and rain in the air. She spoke about her childhood by the river, her studies, her dreams. I told her about my travels, my loneliness, and how I sometimes felt like I lived in airports more than in homes. She looked at me thoughtfully. "Then maybe you haven't arrived yet," she said. We stopped by a small tea house lit with warm golden lamps. The owner knew her. She ordered for us without asking. The tea was delicate, floral, like breathing in spring. She laughed when I burned my tongue, then gently blew across my cup before handing it back. I didn't remember the conversation word for word, just her voice, the light on her face, and the feeling that, for the first time in years, I wanted to stay somewhere longer than my contract allowed. That night, I walked back to the hotel with her words in my head. "Maybe you haven't arrived yet." Days turned into weeks. Work meetings became lighter, easier, partly because I began to look forward to the evenings. Li Wei would find excuses to walk me through new neighborhoods, introduce me to street food I couldn't pronounce, or teach me simple phrases in Mandarin. Once, on a quiet Sunday, she took me to a garden filled with lotus ponds. "This is my favorite place," she said. "Everything moves slowly here." We sat by the water, sunlight catching the edges of her hair. I told her about my life, the marriage that had ended, the silence of my apartment, the ache of always being in motion. She listened quietly, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. "Maybe," she said softly, "you travel because your heart doesn't know where to land." I smiled. "And where should it land?" She looked at me, eyes steady, open. "Maybe here." The air between us shifted. There was no need for words, only the sound of cicadas, the scent of tea, and the quiet realization that some connections don't ask for permission. They just happen. When my last day came, I found her waiting by the car that would take me to the airport. She handed me a small red envelope. Inside was a pressed lotus flower. "So, you remember to slow down," she said. I wanted to tell her how much she'd changed me, how something in me had finally landed, but I couldn't find the right words. So I just said, "Thank you, Li Wei." She smiled, eyes shining. "You'll come back." "I will," I said, though neither of us knew when. Now, months later, in my quiet apartment overlooking the cold gray of Chicago, I keep that lotus by the window. When the wind moves the curtain, I swear I can smell jasmine and rain again, and I remember her voice, soft as tea steam, saying, "Maybe here."